Today's project is a special one. This project in particular was the tipping point that made me decide to start the Uncharted DIY channel to begin with. What I'm trying to do is extend my countertops. In my kitchen, I've got a countertop that overhangs one side where you can sit a couple people at, but there's no overhang on the other two sides. And that would be usable space, but it's really uncomfortable to sit people there now. So I wanted an overhang on there, and I looked everywhere. I looked for written instructions, I looked for video instructions. I just couldn't find anything out there on how to extend a countertop, but on a temporary basis. I did find a lot of information on how to permanently extend the countertops. That's not a solution because I need to be able to get to the doors and drawers underneath the overhang. One of the solutions that I had come up with was a folding table with adjustable legs, and the idea being that I could just butt that right up to the countertop. The problem with that is it's ugly, it's not sturdy, and it's got legs that are going to stick down. And if I put two of those up there, one on each side, there's going to be legs all over the place to trip on. So I needed to come up with something that was not only removable, but once it's been removed, I don't want evidence that it was there on the cabinet. The solution I came up with instead was to create pockets so that these rods could go into these pockets like that. These are the receptacles. So these would be mounted underneath the countertop, and this would slide in like that, nice and tight. This would stick out and would support the extension. The idea being is that they can be removed, and the only thing that's going to be visible left are little 3/4 inch squares. Because the edge of the countertop overhangs the cabinets a little bit, I don't think those are really going to be very noticeable, and if they are, you could just take wood blocks and plug those into place. Or you could just leave them open if you've got enough of a lip and they may never be noticed. So let's get started. So this is what we've got to work with for this particular cabinet. You can see here, this is the underside of the countertop, and this lip over here, that represents the bottom of the countertop lip is. So this needs to be flush all the way back. So we just need to measure the distance. That is 3/4 of an inch. So we just need a spacer that is 3/4 of an inch deep, 11 1/4 inches long. The width is just going to be wide enough for the 3/4 inch tube, and then we'll have a cleat on either side that prevents the tube from shifting side to side. I have the wood all cut for my cleat or rod pockets, however you want to refer to them. So this is the part that's going to go underneath the bottom of the countertop. And the idea is that these 3/4 by 3/4 inch pieces of pine will line like this. And then that way, when the rod or square tube goes in, it will create kind of a pocket that it'll just slide into like that. And this will prevent the steel tubing from wiggling back or forth and should keep it quite sturdy. So since these are going to be inside the cabinet and kind of blind, and I'm pushing this in from the front, it'd be really difficult to get this precisely lined up in there. And so what I'm going to do is notch these corners like this. That way there's no problem getting this to feed in even blind. Okay, now with those notched, we can assemble this. So just take a little bead of glue, to make sure that I get these lined up perfectly. What I'm going to do, put the first one down and attach it. Now for this piece, to make sure that I've allowed the precise amount of room for the metal rod, I've left it loose. I'm going to drop this into place Press it up against this way, not super tight. This doesn't need to be really tight, and it'll make it more difficult to put this rod in through a blind hole if I do. See, now it's kind of difficult not to find that slot. So, final thing is we need to make sure that when the rod is in there, it doesn't do this or that. So the way I'm going to do that, make sure that's pressed in good and tight. We've got some mending plates here. There are divots on this side and there are raised dots on that side. These dots need to go up so that they don't interfere with this metal rod. And because I'm using screws for this portion, it is going to require some pilot holes. Now you may have noticed I didn't screw these down all the way. I want to leave some slack in there, which we'll adjust by hand in a moment. So that's pretty loose, probably a little too loose. Now we can adjust it by hand. You don't want these to be too tight or it's going to be really difficult to get the rod in and out. But that is just about perfect. So now that the rod pockets are done, I'm going to pre-drill holes in them to make it easier to mount underneath the countertops instead of trying to do it while they're in the cabinets. And because this is particle board, if you screw too near the edge, it often will tear the particle board apart. So by pre-drilling, that's going to avoid that whole situation. Now that the pocket receptacles are done, we can mount them on the underside of the countertop here. So it's essential to countersink these center pre-drilled holes so that the screw goes in and stays nice and flat so it doesn't interfere with the actual insertion of the metal tube. Alright, now we need to figure out exactly where to cut the cabinet. So I can see a bit of the receptacle pocket back there, and I've marked where the edges are of the entrance hole, like this. Let's make sure that is 3/4 of an inch, and then it's going to be 3/4 of an inch down. So let's measure that from the bottom of this lip. And that one is ready to be cut out. Now the tool I'm going to use for the job is a multi-tool. And I've got a 3/8 inch blade on here. And because this oscillates back and forth, it's going to cut about a 1/2 inch slot, which is perfect. Now it's time to see how this fits together. So let's try inserting this. That is perfect. That is incredibly sturdy. Doesn't want to wiggle back and forth either direction, and it has no ability to go up or down. That's exactly what we want. So let's do the next one. And that didn't cut quite as cleanly as I was hoping for. There's not a lot of space to work with here, but I knew I was going to need to patch a little bit with some spackle and some paint. Now that I've got my measurement from inside the cabinet and including the overhang that I want where the extension is going to attach, I've got this marked and I'm going to put it in the chop saw. File the edge. So looks pretty clean, it's pretty nice. Check this end. This is the end that it came cut with, and that's nice and dull. So that's good. This is ready to go into the cabinet. So this cabinet is a different situation. What I'm going to need to do is put my receptacle pocket in, but all the way to the back. So because I've got a ridge right here, I'm able to put this up here, slide it up here, and figure out exactly where I need to make my cut in the front of the cabinet. And then I'll be able to slide it all the way back and put a 3/4 inch particle board spacer in this area to make sure that it's flush all the way across. Now that the receptacle pockets are finished, it's time to show you how this all fits together. The first step in that process is to attach the align and locks to the underside of the countertops. If I had a deeper lip on the countertop, I would be able to just pull one screw out, pivot them, and just leave them up on the counter all the time, or they wouldn't be noticeable. But my lip on my counter is pretty shallow and it won't work that way. So I do remove them all the way. It only takes a couple minutes to put them on. I can pull out the decorative caps that go over the holes when they're not in use. They just pull out with a fingernail. And then it's just a matter of putting the rods into the pockets. So I go through the holes in the cabinet and just push straight back. Like that. Once those are in, the next step is to add the extension. And all that needs to be done on that is to sit this edge down on the rods, line up the align and lock pockets, like that, and cinch them down with the locks. And that's all there is to it for the single one that I'm using for this. And as you can see, it's pretty sturdy, works great, and more importantly, no legs. I did install full extension slides so that I still am able to pull open the drawers and access what I need to, even with these up. And because they don't have legs, I don't have any problem doing that. Now the way this was designed is I can just have this single piece up when I'm just going to have a couple more people over, or I've got this extension here that I can also add on, and now I can have 6 or 7 people sitting around this countertop, no problem. They are independent of each other so that I don't have to have them both up all the time. So just like the other, the rods go in. So this extension is added the exact same way, just lines up and then is cinched down. So as you can see, now it's gone from a 2-seater countertop to 6, could even squeeze more if you needed to. Now one of the things I discovered when I put this together is that it's a long distance from this chair to this chair. And so I created this Lazy Susan here that we can put in a center and be able to pass things back and forth that way. I do have a video that shows exactly how to make that. It's an easy weekend project and it costs less than $30 to build. So the last step is to put the caps back in, the holes, like that. And it's done. You'd never know they were there.